Hello and welcome to James Hill Sports. I am he. We are joined by a special gentleman. He is the coach. He is known as Coach Garfield. You remember him from his days in the NBA and with the Oklahoma Sooners. First and foremost, Coach, I hope you and the family are well. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm just taking it easy out in the sun.
The Valley of the Sun, son.
Valley of the Sun. Actually, a lot of sun now. It's over 100 degrees. But it's good, though. It gives me a chance to relax and recover.
Well, Coach, it's that time of year. It's the NBA Finals. All the teams want to be there, but only two teams can make it. The Western Conference champions, the Golden State Warriors, and obviously the Eastern Conference champions in the Boston Celtics, one of the cornerstones of the great NBA. And you spent some time in the finals. Take us into the finals, what the thought process is, the mentality, and again, it's all about adjustments and playing at a high level.
It really is. You have like 3 seasons in the NBA. You have the regular season, and you have the playoff, and then of course you have the finals, which is totally different from the other two. It is just a different ball game. Everything changes. You got 2 teams left, and the focus is on those 2 teams. And most of the time, everything changes as far as preparation, as far as travel. As far as I want to say the attention is focused on certain players. And if you have to perform, then you can either become the hero in the playoff or you can become a guy that everybody forget about.
The Boston Celtics, you spent some time there as a player for the Phoenix Suns, among other teams. Take us back to the finals. You hit the shot heard around the world. It's the old garden, it's the parquet. And what the thought process is when you go in there, the fans are right on top of you. They're chanting, it's Red Auerbach, and the history and the mystique of Boston, if you will.
As a player, you love to go into a hostile environment and perform at your best. And Boston is one of those places where you really want to be at the top of your game because the whole world is focusing on you and no one gave you a chance, especially when the Suns went in, to win the game. So it gives you something special to play for. You have that extra adrenaline to go in and say, okay, we're going to beat the Celtics. We beat the Celtics and we're on top of the world because at that time they were the best team in NBA over the years.
Now, this year in 2022, we see the Golden State Warriors and we see the Boston Celtics. Take us into this series. It's a series I predicted Golden State to win in 6, 4-2. But anything can happen when you have 2 teams playing basketball. Take us into this series so far and what you see from a coach's standpoint.
Well, I picked Golden State to win in 6 also because they have the experience. They've been there. I think this is their 6th final in the last 8 years. So I think they have an opportunity to do something that Boston, this is their first, for most of their players on their team, it's really the first time they actually been this far in the playoffs. So it's a little extra pressure on them. I think Golden State have a little bit more firepower than Boston because they've been there. Guys like Klay Thompson and Steph, of course, then you got Draymond Green. So you got 3 guys that has been in the finals before, has won 3 championships. So they have the advantage. Boston have young kids, and you just, as a young kid, when you go into a different environment and you're excited, but you've never been there before. So you don't really know what to expect. And I think that's the advantage that Golden State has.
Now, this young fella out of St. Louis and Jayson Tatum, how special is he? And when you look at this gentleman, it looks like he has a tremendous upside. He's going to be one of the great players wearing that Celtics jersey. And again, he has a lot of tools and he's getting better every day.
I like his game. He's a terrific scorer. I think that one thing that he have going against him right now, he have to protect the ball a little bit more. But he's playing a lot of minutes, and when you play a lot of minutes in a high-profile game, you get a little tired a little early. And this 4th quarter hasn't been the thing that, you would like to see him do more in the 4th quarter. But I think fatigue plays a lot of part in that too. So But I think going back to Boston and have 2 days rest, I think he'll be ready to play. But I still think the experience might be the key to the Golden State Warriors.
Coach, Mr. Brown is also a special talent when you look at that two-headed monster in Boston. And again, this is a guy who has at least a decade ahead of him, and he's going to be a great player. Can you talk about Brown and he's able to run the floor and finish and play really good for Boston?
Jayson, he has a good all-around game. I think the one disadvantage you have right now, he's a young kid, and I think sometimes he try to do too much. He get really excited instead of just letting the game come to him. I think once he slows down and, get a little bit more experience, he's going to be one of the top players in this league, no question about it. And I think this playoff is going to really help him a lot. Win or lose, he's going to learn a lot from being in the finals. And he's going to learn how to control his game. He's going to learn how to know when to go and when not to go. And I think that's going to be a big difference.
Coach, Marcus Smart, a hard-nosed two-guard. He can play the point. He's a defender. He can compete. And he's a guy who is really just trying to play good basketball for the Celtics. He won't go away. Can you talk about Mr. Smart and what you see with him and he's competitive?
He's definitely not going to go away. I like Marcus Smart, even when he was at Oklahoma State, although, he was one of our rivalry. But the thing about Marcus is that he was always a great defensive player. But I think his offense has really picked up a lot. And they asked him to be a point guard, and he's learning that position because he's really not a natural point guard, but he's learning that position. And he's putting a lot of pressure on Steph and those guys too. But I think the key to the Celtics is going to be how he distributes the ball and get the other guys involved.
Coach, memorable moments in the Garden. You were able to provide fans with one of those memorable moments when you hit the shot. We see the performance that Steph had recently. We see what Michael Jordan did with the 63 points, Magic Johnson's baby hook, Kareem's big hook. Take us into the Garden and into some of those times when they have big time performances.
Well, the only difference between our performance and the rest of those guys, they did win the game. But the thing about it is that when you get a moment like that, and they don't come very often, but you have to try to take advantage of that situation. Going into Boston with the Suns, no one really gave us a chance, and we probably did something that no one expected. We got an opportunity to take a shot, and those are the type of shots that, as a kid, you're in your backyard, you're on the playground. This is to win the game. So you used to try to put that in your mind and take those shots. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to take a shot like that and make it. And, that's one of the things that you just dream about as a player.
Hostile environments, the Garden, the fans are right on top of you. Every time you look up, you look in the rafters, you see all those world championships. What's it like to be on the road to play a game like that against a team like that? And it's kind of like us against the world mentality. And you're in the hotel and it's all you have is your team. And what's it like to go into a place like Boston that time of year?
You have to depend on your teammate, your coaching staff, and you have some fans that's going to be pulling for you, but you have to depend on your teammates and your fans. But you really want to go into a situation like that and just quiet the crowd down, because they're going to be rowdy, they're going to be all on you. But if you can go in and quiet them down and you know that you've done your job, and that's the best feeling in the world.
Klay Thompson, he has a nickname, Game 6 Klay. In recent days, he looked like the guy that we know from 3 or 4 years ago before he was injured. Talk about Klay Thompson. He's able to make shots. They call him the Splash Brothers, and he can run the floor and knock down three-pointers.
Well, I think he's getting his game back. When you're coming off a 2-year injury, it's hard. The toughest part, not the physical part, just the mental part of it. And I think every game he looks a little better. And the last game, he really looked like he's found his shot. So if that's the case, then that's really going to be a big plus for the Golden State. And I like his confidence. He feels as though, hey, I'm back. I know what I can do. And so he's just doing the thing that he used to do.
Coach, Draymond Green, forward, Michigan State. He runs the floor, power dribble. The fans in Boston, they have a good time with him. But can you talk about Draymond Green? And some people say he's struggling, and it's a long series. But when you see Draymond Green, what do you see?
He's the type of guy that, people say, well, he's not scoring, he's not doing this. He do the little thing that a lot of the fans don't see. As a player, I would hate to play against him because he just gets on your nerves, and that's his job. But he's really the type of guy that get those guys a lot of good shots. He can handle the ball, he can pass the ball, and he can rebound the basketball. Now, he's not a scorer. He's never been a scorer. But, every now and then he comes with some big baskets. I think if he just do the things that he normally do, assist, rebound, and play defense, he's going to be great for them. And he's been the key to a lot of those wins.
Coach, when you get into the NBA and teams are switching everything and they're making the extra pass and guys, you want guys to go over the screen instead of under. Talk a little bit about what you see out there during the finals. And sometime a guy will grab a guy's arm and pull it real tight. And by the time the referee looks over, the official, it looks like he's flopping or he's pulling the guy down. And sometime that whistle is going to blow. It might blow for the other team as opposed to your team.
Well, the thing about that is that if you can get away with it, then you do it. As long as you can get away with it, it's not a foul, right? But if you get caught, then you make an adjustment. Officials make the adjustment, players make the adjustment. Boston made some adjustment on Steph Curry. When he first come off the pick, they were dropping off to him and he had wide open shots. Now they up on him. So, he's making other plays now. I think he had eight or nine assists the last game. So, although he didn't make any baskets in the threes, but he made some great assists to get other guys baskets. So you make an adjustment during the game. You prepare, you have a preparation for a game, but during the game, you have to make game time decisions. And I think Golden State had made some major adjustments.
Game 6, you go back into a hostile environment. It's a made-for-TV moment. Everybody will be there. Everybody will be watching. Is there a whole lot you would say to this ball club, or is it pretty much guys know what they need to do and you go out there and follow a game plan? How do you approach going into Game 6?
You go into Game 6 with a game plan, but the game plan could go out the window the first quarter, the first 5 minutes of the game. But, you've been prepared for this the whole year, and going into Game 6, one team is going to win and go home. And the other team is going to lose and go home. But one team is going to win and win the championship. So as a team that's down, 3-2, you put it all on the line because there's no tomorrow. And you put it out. And the team that are up, a lot of teams make mistakes when they're up 3-2. They say, well, we got one, we can go home and win at home. But you want to try to end this thing as quick as possible because anything can happen in Game 7. So if you can end it in Game 6 like Golden State should, then that'll be great for them. But if Boston get a chance to go into Game 7, who knows what might happen?
When you think about the finals this year and you look back at Game 1, is that a game that, people say, oh, somebody stole a game or the team didn't finish a game and Boston played well down the stretch and they took Game 1 and Golden State really didn't finish that game. When you think about Game 1, did that change the complexion of this series?
No, I don't think so. I think Boston in Game 1, they could not miss in the fourth quarter, And as another team, when the team that hot, you try to do a lot of different things to try to get back in the game. Golden State missed a lot of shots because maybe Boston had a lot to do with it because they didn't miss. And Game 2 was totally different. Golden State couldn't miss. So it's been one of those type series that the hot team, if you can get hot at the right time, then you're going to probably end up winning the game. I take the game last night where Boston came out in the third quarter, was on fire. They went from, I think, 11 down to went up 1. But at the end of the third quarter, Golden State hit the big shot that gave them the lead, that gave them the momentum back, and they just kind of took it from there.
Coach, going forward, the best of 2, you get 2 opportunities to win 1 in terms of Golden State. When you see Golden State going forward, what do you see with this ball club?
Well, I think you're going to see them tomorrow night putting everything on the line. If they can end this thing, they want to end this thing. anytime you're up, you want to end it because you never know. And I think that you're going to see a Golden State team come out tomorrow night in the next game ready to try to end this series. You're going to see a desperate Boston team that's going to come out with the fans behind them, and they're going to put it all on the line. If Golden State can, withstand the first quarter and a half, and stay within the ball game, then I think they have a great opportunity to win.
The fans behind him. You got Paul Pierce over there with a top 75 jacket on. He's waving his hands around like ML Carr. The people are in the audience. The fans are right on top of you. How special is it to go into those atmospheres? And you talked about silencing the crowd and taking the crowd out. But can you talk about those kind of episodes? And again, it's a beautiful sight when you see those kind of fans there, and it's time to play ball.
Well, it is. Once the game starts, your focus is not on the fans or your focus is on playing the game. Paul Pierce can get up and cheer all he wants, but he can't shoot the basketball. So the guys on the court, they just focus on what they have to do to win the ball game. And like I said, the best feeling in the world is silent the crowd. If Golden State go in there and can put this thing away, then that just silent the whole crowd. And I think that's what they're focusing in on. They're not really thinking about the crowd in Boston. They think about how they can win the game.
Coach, Dynasty, 6 finals appearances in 8 years. Yeah, they had a time where they were rebuilding, but they got back really quick, and there's no guarantees. Can you talk about the Dynasty in Golden State and what they're able to do? And now they're on the other side of the Bay. They moved out of Oakland, Alameda, and now they're on the San Francisco side, the city in Chase, and they have a tremendous upside.
They really do. They got a lot of young kids on the bench that not getting the opportunity to play, but they're getting the experience of being in the finals. And, in the last couple of years, they had a lot of injuries, Klay had missed 2 years. This year, Davon got hurt, and also Steph got hurt. So you can't really say that they was down. They just had a lot of serious injuries. And once you see them get healthy again, they begin to look like the Golden State of years in the past. And they can also, Steve is doing a good job of working young guys in. They brought in Poole, who has had a great year this year. Wiggins, I think, has found himself at home. So they have guys that they can work into the situation because you have 3 guys that Damon, Steph, and Klay that kind of grab those guys and, put them under their arm and teach them what Golden State is all about.
Coach, do you see the league in a good place right now? The fans are back. It's very popular. It's international. Talk about where you see the league going these days.
I think it's in a great position right now. You got a lot of good young talent. Some of the older guys, like Ron, those guys are kind of fading out. So the young talent is coming on. And I think it's in a great situation. I'd like to see, teams like the Suns. I'd like to see them get back to where they were. They had a disappointing finish, but they had a great young team. So I think it's going to be a lot of competition next year, especially out in the West. You got Utah, you got Dallas. The Clippers going to be healthy next year. The Lakers probably going to be back. Not like the original Lakers, but they probably going to be back too. So in Denver. So you look at the West. I can't forget about Memphis with Morant. So they got a lot of good young talent that can really take this league to another level.
Coach, Westbrook, some people feel like he's not a good fit in Los Angeles. He's at home. He's a UCLA guy, a LA guy, and he's playing with LeBron and the guys. When you see that gentleman, what do you see in Westbrook?
Well, I think you have to make an adjustment. I think Westbrook have to kind of at least change his game a lot more than he did this year because he's not the Westbrook that played in Oklahoma City or, Houston or Washington. He needs to become more of a team guy. And, he's not going to have the ball in his hand as much as he have in the past. So he has to learn how to play off the ball. And I think if he can do that, then he can really come in and help the team. I don't know whether he have to be with the Lakers next year, but I think if he's with the Lakers next year, if he can make the adjustment and become a team player, I think he'd be a big asset for them.
Coach, the Valley of Suns, Phoenix Suns, when you look at Mr. Booker, and you look at CP and the guys, health is a premium. Talk about the Suns shining bright going into next season.
I think they're going to be back where they were this year as far as competition-wise. They have a big decision to make in Ayton. if they got to re-sign him. If they can re-sign him, then they add a couple of young guys, because CPT probably have another year or two left. And so they need to start working the guy in, to replace him. But you got Booker, you got guys that really young, that know what it like to win. And they've been to the finals, so they know what it's like. So I think they're looking forward to getting back there next year.
Coach, do you see Milwaukee making a push next year with Giannis and the guys, and even Miami and of course Philadelphia is always clamoring to get deep into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think Milwaukee, the thing that hurt them this year when Milton got hurt, they only had one really legit scorer in Giannis. Anytime you got a guy like Giannis on the team, you're always a threat. Miami always have that tradition that they're always going to be there because they're a very solid organization, very solid team. Philly can go up and down. It all depends on what Harden do next year. But I like the kid Maxey. So if Embiid can stay healthy, Maxey and Harden come back be close to James Harden, I think they have a good shot. But we can't leave Boston out either because they're young. And this is only going to help them get into the finals. Going to help them be a little bit more hungry than they were at the start of the season.
Coach, both of these Ball brothers, LaMelo Ball, Lonzo Ball, one of them is in Chicago, the other gentleman is in Charlotte. And then you even look down at New Orleans and you see Zion trying to get healthy. Can you talk about some of this young talent that's out there? And guys are competitive and they're hungry and they want to compete.
Yeah, I think that's why the league is in good shape with those guys. I think with Zion, if he can stay healthy, and just get in shape, he could take New Orleans up a notch or two. Charlotte, to me, was a kind of a surprise because I didn't think they would be as good as they were. But I like Ball. He's a great young player. He's a much better shooter than I thought he was going to be. But he can also pass the basketball. And then of course Chicago, you never know because they had so many injuries this year. But with Ball there, and also you got to come back with. I don't know what they'll do about some of the free agents they have, but they have a good shot. I would put them in the second level. I would put them in the top level with the other teams. But they, anything can happen. These young kids come out sometime and they can be having some of those great years. And I think you have to look at those kids that are in their first, second, third years that really is going to start maturing a lot more.
A franchise that you coached with, Washington. Talk about Washington. They've moved on from some guys like Westbrook, but they have some young talent there, and they have a great fan base in our nation's capital.
Yeah, they do. I think they need a leader. They need someone that's going to, that they can kind of depend on, more of a leader that can take these young kids and they can learn from. I don't think Bradley Beal, whether he want to be in Washington or not, he's the type of guy that could be one of those guys. But I don't know what they're going to do right now. It's kind of hard to tell because they have a lot of young kids, and it's hard to win in this league with all young guys. You need some veterans on your team to kind of put their young guys under their arm.
Another franchise where you coached, the Dallas Mavericks. You look at Luka, international player, and he's a special talent. He can score and he can play the game with pace. And then you look at Brunson and some of the guys they have there. Can you talk a little bit about Dallas and how special that franchise can be going forward?
That was another team I forgot to mention in the West because they have some good young talent. Luka, they have, Hardaway was out most of the year because he got hurt. So they have some good young talent. And, and Jason Kidd had done a great job with them. If he can get them to play a little bit better defense, especially Luka, then they could be a threat. But they need probably one more player, one more scorer, at the guard position. Then I think they'd be okay.
Damian Lillard, a guy who can score the basketball, run the floor, and do some things. Does he need help in Portland, or do you see him staying there? Or what do you see for Lillard?
I think he needs help. I don't see him leaving, but they moved McCullough, so I don't see him leaving. But they need to add some little bit more depth to kind of take the pressure off of him, I mean, he's carried that franchise for a long time, but he definitely needs some help. And they need a little more size, I think, at the guard position. It takes some pressure off of Leonard. You don't have to worry about trying to guard a lot of these top scorers. But I like his game. I like him. They probably could move him, but I wouldn't move him if I was in Portland. I'd try to get some help for him.
The Atlanta Hawks, they have some young players, some talent there, and a great fan base. When you think about the Mecca and the Atlanta Hawks, what do you see going forward with Nate and his ball club?
I like the improvement that they made this year defensively. Nate had Trae Young to kind of adjust to how you want him to play. And they're the type of team that can be dangerous. So they can get hot. They have some good young scorers. They have a Capella who can also control the middle for rebound and blocking shots. So they have a good nucleus. I think that bench could get a little better. But like I say, the league is in such a great position that it's going to be hard to pick a team next year that's going to be dominant like they have this year.
Coach, the Orlando Magic, they have the #1 pick this year, and they have a great opportunity to go in the draft and select somebody with a tremendous upside. Talk a little bit about, the #1 pick and how special it is, because it changes franchises and it can change a franchise for the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, but I don't know whether they have a franchise player in the draft this year. They have some good players. I don't know whether they have a franchise player, the guy that can come in this year and kind of change the franchise. They have someone they can build around. I have no idea who they're looking at. But you need to get a player that you can build around that's going to be there for a while. And he could turn out to be a franchise player. But right now, I don't think there's no guy coming out of college as a franchise player.
Coach, in closing, there's 2 games scheduled. There's 1 game coming up, and then there's the game 7, if necessary. In closing, when we think about the NBA Finals, are there any final comments you want to make as we think about Boston and we think about Golden State? And again, Mr. Curry is he's the chef, and he's trying to cook up this dynasty, and I think he wants another parade.
Well, I think he might get another parade too. The last game, he looked a little fatigued for me in the last game. A lot of his shots came up short, hitting the front of the rim. But he had a couple of days to rest. I think he really want to come out and show that, hey, I'm still one of the best players in the league, and I'm going to come out. And he want that MVP. He don't have one in the finals, so he really want that MVP. And I think when it's all said and done, I think Golden State's going to be raising that trophy at the end of the game.
Coach, in closing, take us back to the Garden, what it was like for you to hit that shot, and take us into the Garden. I mean, it's a special place, the Leprechauns, the history of it. And again, it's a different type of arena.
It really is, And the thing about our team, when we went into the Garden, no one gave us a chance. We shouldn't have even been in the series, what everybody was saying. So going into Boston in Game 5 is that, we're there. We said we have nothing to lose. We're going to put it all on the line. And people don't remember, we was down big in that game in the first half. But, we had the type of team that never gave up. And we got in a situation where we had an opportunity to win the game. And, it just fell, second or 2 short. But the thing about it is that as long as you have the confidence that you can go into a place and you got a chance to win, then anything can happen. And we almost pulled off the upset of the century, but we couldn't. Just came up a little short. But it was a great experience, not only for me but for the franchise, because I think that kind of got our franchise off on the right track.
Coach, in closing, are there any final comments you want to make as we think about the finals? Again, Golden State, Boston, is going to be a great finish to this season. It's special.
I want to see a great game. I want to see a close game. I don't want to see a blowout. But as a Golden State fan, I'm sure they want to see a blowout. But I just like to see a good game, and not a lot of turnovers. And both teams put their best on the line. And I think to do that, the best team is going to win. And since I predicted Golden State will win the series, I'm going to have to lean toward them a little bit.
Well, folks, there you have it from Gar Heard. He is known for his shot heard around the world. He's also known as a former NBA great, and he was a player for the Oklahoma Sooners. And of course, he was the coach of the Dallas Mavericks and Washington. I'm James Hill. You're watching James Hill Sports, and we will be right back.